Legacy versus Evrima. Which one is the better game? A dispute that extends from the release of the latest branch to today. Since its absolutely disastrous launch back in 2020, Evrima has been evolving, adding new features and mechanics, including some that we never saw during the game's lifespan. But has it finally come to par with Legacy? Is the old Isle still better? That is what we will find out today. Join me in this adventure while we dig deep into both versions and we find out which one is the best. So, how we will do this? Firstly, we need to establish some core game elements to compare both versions with. And remember, we need to keep things fair and objective. What can we use? Well, since this is a dinosaur survival game, the most important part is the dinosaurs. So let's use the roster as evaluation metric. The map is also very important. This game's genre is heavily dependent on level design, so let's use that as well. Some generic stuff like mechanics and features should be available too. Audio is another big one. The Isle is notorious for immersion, so good sound design heavily influences that. You might not notice, but sound has much more impact than vision. And speaking of vision, graphics... nah. They possess different levels of graphical fidelity, of course, but it's not substantial enough. Besides, that can easily become a subjective point, so let's not use that in this video. Alright, now that we have everything sorted, let's begin. Starting with the latter. At the time of this recording, Evrima has 9 playable dinosaurs. Yuta, Tenonto, Carno, Dryo, Stego, Terra, Dano, Ipsi, and Peki. 4 carnivores, 5 herbivores, 1 semi-aquatic, and 1 flyer. Pretty balanced if I do say so myself. Let's not check the legacy roster. Jesus Christ, this is a long list. Rex, Austro, Carno, Shant, Theory, Gali, Dibble, Dryo, Treg, Stego, Allo, Maya, Suko, Enki, Herrera, Peki, Yuta, Acro, Barry, Taco, Vilo, Spino, Giga, Ava, Kema, Oro, Alberto, Sarah, Dilo, and Para. 30 dinosaurs in total. 15 carnivores, 15 herbivores, 3 semi-aquatic, and no flyers. Yeah, Legacy wins this time. It's kinda difficult to argue when one side has 3 times the roster size of the other. By the way, for those who are confused, hypos are not here because the Quetz is completely locked, Titanoboa isn't even finished, and Pews, even though you see admins playing as them, yeah, it's only for admins at this point. AIs count because on most servers you can actually get access to them pretty easily, so there's that. Okay, next, the map. Legacy currently has 3 maps, V3, Thanya, and the level test map, which even though it's barely a map to begin with, it's so frequently used by the community that it earned its place as a dedicated Isle map. Evrima has a single map, Isla Spiro. Legacy would win in numbers alone, but when it comes to maps, quality is much more important than quantity. So let's look a little deeper and see what else we can find. Thanya is 6 square kilometers. It is a somewhat young map in the Isle's development, which even though has a decent layout design and interesting visuals, it is overshadowed by V3. A 15 square kilometer island that is by far the most popular map currently. Spiro is 16 square kilometers, although only a portion of it is actually playable. I couldn't find anywhere if those 16 square kilometers were regarding the entire map or just a playable area, but by anecdotal experience, it feels more like the latter than the former, so let's stick with that. We do know that Spiro right now has only a 1/4 of its total area unlocked to the public, so the math is pretty simple here. In total, Spiro, if we assume the 16 square kilometers represent only that 1/4, is roughly 64 square kilometers. Why does this matter? Because Evrima's map has the worst performance out of every map the Isle has ever made. And you know what? That's really not that bad. For a 64 square kilometer map, that's actually pretty decent, because yes, Every time you play Spyro, you're loading the entire map, not just that 1/4. And when I say the performance is bad, it's really, really bad. But people can circumvent that. Lower the graphics, get a better PC, wait for performance updates. It's still bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not a definitive factor to consider one better than the other. Besides, all Isle maps have bad performance anyway. What matters here the most is the level design. A couple of months ago I explained what elements contribute for a good map in survival games, and why V3 was so bad in that regard. That map was in development for over 3 years, and Spyro shows that they learn absolutely nothing. The extreme overabundance of vegetation not only is heavily impactful in performance, but it also adds chaos to the map's layout. You can check the video for more detailed explanation, but simply put, multiplayer survival maps require a precise structure to guide players to specific locations without them noticing. The best level design is the one you can't see. In Spyro, you can see anything at all with how thick the jungle is, which would be fine if that happened in specific, isolated locations. But the developers focused so much in making a pretty, immersive, and realistic tropical island that they forgot to make an actual fun map to play on. Having so much foliage everywhere to the point of making people fall off ledges because they couldn't see. It's immersive, it's realistic, but it's not fun. The Isle is not a documentary, it's a video game. Another point for Legacy. Now, mechanics and features. Over the few years since its launch, Evrima has added a bunch of new mechanics to the game, some which were very anticipated by the community. Currently, we have Scent, Pounce, Charge Attacks, Fractures, Bleed, Diet, Swimming/Diving, Flying, Integrated Alter, Tracking, Body Dragging, Locational Damage, Group System, Selectable Spawn Points, Seamless Growth, Wallowing, Overeating/Sickness, Humans, which has less functionality than AI at this point, Controller Support, and AI. When it comes to Legacy, there are obviously a lot of features that overlap, so I will only mention the ones that are not present in Evrima. Global Chat, Replays, Skin Customization, Nesting, and Dinosaur Gender. As we can see, nesting is the last big mechanic missing from Evrima, and even though such feature is part of the core game loop of the Isle, aka it's mega important, the amount of improvements made so far makes Evrima the version with the best gameplay experience. On a mechanical standpoint, however, that is important, on a mechanical standpoint only. So this one goes for Evrima. And finally, let's check audio and animations. Let's start with animations. The Isle's new branch made significant changes to most animations from dinosaurs that transitioned to Evrima. Peki, Stego, and Dryo are some good examples. However, others weren't so lucky. Yuta and Carno especially got their animations completely ruined. Their Legacy's iteration had much smoother and elegant walking cycles, for example, that gave each predator weight and personality. Currently, they look more like cartoon characters running than dinosaurs. There was no need for change. Their animations were completely fine. These changes only made the dinosaur worse. A good video game character is 20% model and 80% animation, and those 80% were changed for no good purpose. Fortunately, most dinosaurs are fine, so these negative alterations didn't affect the roster as a whole too much. But when it comes to audio, however, that's a different story. Environment-wise, there's so much background noise that makes it much more difficult to detect audio cues from other players in comparison to Legacy. And the addition of distant background roars often confuses people rather than enhancing immersion. This was a mistake made in Legacy in 2015 with the first iterations of Isle Mesa, and people hated it. Why this came back 7 years later is beyond me. And for the most offending aspect of all, dinosaur wars. What? Is this broadcast? What? They did something with sound's broadcasting distance because roar's volume fell off hard at a very close distance. There's also this constant feeling as if the dinosaurs had a pillow in front of their mouth or something. Something I also noticed with Path of Titans actually. It feels muffled. The sound is not clean, and that was something that the Isle always excelled at. Say whatever you want about the map, the performance, latency, rubber banding, Legacy was bad in many aspects. But sound design, they absolutely nailed it. Roars were crystal clean, well defined. They were unique, easily distinguishable, and hearing them from afar was easy and sometimes even emphasized by the game itself, when the ambient volume is lowered automatically every time an apex predator broadcasts. This was not only removed in Evrima, but ruined even further by changing the dinosaurs' roars, adding huge amounts of chaotic noise that don't contribute to the melody of the broadcast whatsoever. Animations are a mixed bag, and audio is objectively inferior, so Legacy wins this time as well. But some of you may say, Legacy was 5 years old when Evrima came out. It's unfair to compare both. Well, yeah, you're right. So let's compare them on an equal footing. Evrima launched June 19th, 2020. If we stop the clock March 11th, 2022, Evrima is 1 year, 8 months, and 20 days old, which translates to 630 days. So let's compare 630 days of Evrima with 630 days of Legacy. From December 2nd, 2015 to August 22nd, 2017. And let me tell you, this was eye-opening. Just a small note, I was checking the patch notes for both versions, and I saw that it took 165 days for Evrima to add day and night cycle. You know, something that comes with Unreal Engine by default. Just found it funny. Let's start with the roster. At that time, Legacy had not 9, not 15, not 20, not 30, but 32 dinosaurs. By July 2016, 8 months after the game came out, the Isle already had 21 dinosaurs, and by the time this 630-day time period ended, the game had every single dinosaur except one. The Para. In fact, 97% of the entire roster was made during the first 2 years of development. Para was the only dinosaur released in a span of 3 years. Not only that, we had Pews, Quets, AI dinosaurs were playable. Hell, even fucking Hyperrex was publicly playable at one point. When it comes to maps, keep in mind that not all maps were available at the same time. Some would be deleted, reworked, reintroduced over time, but during those 630 days, Legacy had, and check this out, Isle Mesa, Region 1, Region 2, which is the community's absolutely most favorite map, Misty Valley, V3, 4X, V4, Pillar of Creation, and Redwood Forest. Not to mention deathmatch maps as well, as some other experimental maps that most people can't even remember the name of. We had a ton of maps, and most of them were actually decently designed. They weren't great, let's not go that far, but they had a decent layout. And mechanics, oh man, mechanics. We already had Scent, Pounce, Bone Break, Bleed, Swim, Flying, Altern, Global Chat, Modding, Replace, Controller Support, Voice Wheel, Fake Limping, Sandbox, Progression and Survival game modes, Skin Selection, and we had a shit ton of skins, Nesting, Dinosaur Gender, Growth, AI. We had all of this years ago. The difference between past and present Legacy is staggering. There's more difference between past Legacy and current Legacy than modern Legacy and Evrima. The insane amount of progress we had in less than 2 years surpasses everything we have currently. The Isle back then was the shit. 2016 was the year our community made their memories. Every time you think about how the Isle was in the past and how much you miss it, this is when it happened. So, with all of this, we ask again. Legacy versus Evrima. Which one is better? Doesn't matter, because we already lost the best. Thank you for watching.